Holidays are a time to relax in a beautiful setting. Golf, swimming, rambling, and ghosts. This is a tour of a very different kind. In England, a young maidservant may forever roam this country mansion, trapped by a fiery inferno from long ago. In the American South, this bed and breakfast is said to be home to a murderous spirit who lingers at the site of her unspeakable crime.
There are some spirits that consider you an uninvited guest, and sometimes they let you know it.
And in New England, peering eyes from beyond keep watch as guests pass through their former home. Journey into a realm of fear, where phantoms roam and terrifying tales come alive. When checking into a haunted hotel, double occupancy can take on a whole new meaning. On the New England coast in Newport, Rhode Island, magnificent mansions line the ocean drive, each one just a little larger than the next. Off this coast road is one of Newport's most refined houses, the Inn at Shadow Lawn. The inn features 8 elegant guest rooms, decorated in the style of the Victorian era. Here, the ghosts of those who lived and died long ago may still wander. And according to some, other phantoms keep watch.
Some of them are very unhappy that we're here.
The story of one troubled spirit goes back to Victorian times. In 1856, a wealthy man named Hamilton Hoppin built the home on the outskirts of town.
The house is one of the first Italianate stick-style houses to be built in the United States.
This rarity helped make Shadow Lawn much admired. Hamilton Hoppin may have enjoyed showing off his fine house a little too much, lording it over his younger brother Thomas.
Well, what would you like me to do about that?
Jealousy eventually drove the two brothers apart, but perhaps not forever. A century after both brothers had died, the innkeepers conducted a fruitless search for a picture of Hamilton, the house's original owner. But they were able to acquire a painting of the younger brother, Thomas, which they hung prominently in Shadow Lawn.
It's right on the staircase as you go in. It's quite impressive. He looks like he owns the world, not to mention the inn at Shadow Lawn.
Perhaps the painting awakened a long-dead rivalry. The innkeepers believe that at the very moment the image of Thomas was hung on the wall, Hamilton Hoppin sent an angry message.
When we put his picture up, all the clocks in the house turned back an hour. It was uncanny. Unbelievable. Every single clock in the house. To me, it seemed like going back in time.
The managers quickly discovered that Hamilton and Thomas had never settled their differences.
There was a very heaviness to the room at the time, and we felt the coldness.
What they saw next would haunt them forever.
We witnessed the spirits of Hamilton Hoppin and his younger brother Thomas Hoppin. They got into an argument. Thomas was torturing his older brother for some reason.
The hoteliers say that as long as Thomas has a place in the house, Hamilton will never rest in peace. And that the brothers keep a close eye on one another and all who enter the home.
I feel that he's looking at me going up the steps when I get to that picture. And when I come down the steps after checking in a guest, he's looking at me.
But there may be an even darker spirit here, a ghost whose anger can reach into the living world.
There are also other spirits here at the inn at Shadow Lawn that are here because they have no other choice.
Each night during the month of June, the innkeepers go to bed asking themselves one question. Will tonight be the night when she returns? Haunted hotels can make for unusual holidays. In Newport, Rhode Island, the inn at Shadow Lawn appears fated to play host to a wronged woman. There is no way of knowing which night she will pick or what she will destroy. But every June, objects in the front hallway are found violently smashed on the floor. Most recently, Shadow Lawn guests were awakened in the middle of the night by the sound of shattering glass.
Our grand mirror came crashing down into the hallway. It must have been 2:30 in the morning.
Who is the angry spectre behind this mischief? The story of this spirit dates back to 1913. Legend has it that a newlywed heiress moved to Shadow Lawn with her husband, a dashing Newport doctor. But the fairy tale life she'd imagined came crashing down around her when her husband revealed his true colors.
He started openly cheating on her with other women. He would parade his women in front of his wife.
Using his wife's money, the doctor bought one of the first horseless carriages.
At first, when it was purchased, he would take his wife out, but that became less and less. It was more of a time to flaunt and philander around with his other ladies.
The home where the newlyweds were meant to grow old together became a cold and lonely place, and the lady of the house began to change.
She became very secluded, stayed away from people, stayed in her room, didn't really talk to anyone.
Every day, the doctor's wife would stand by her window, watching, waiting for her philandering husband to return. And the rage inside her grew. Until, on a warm day in June, the doctor returned home from one of his afternoon trysts. This time, someone was waiting for him in the bushes. An unseen assailant gunned down the doctor.
Literally out of the blue, out of nowhere, he was shot to death.
No one who knew the couple had any doubt as to who his killer was. The doctor's wife was charged with murder. Though she was eventually acquitted, locals were sure it was a case of a woman scorned and driven to kill. The entire town shunned her for the rest of her life. The innkeepers believe that each June she returns to Shadow Lawn to tell her side of the story, that the doctor left her no other choice.
She does want to make herself known. She does want to tell her story, to put her point across to people.
So when antiques come crashing down in the front hall, the innkeepers see it as her way of striking back at those who would judge her.
Because I'm sure she did love him, there must have been a tremendous amount of guilt.
There are guests who have been startled by a shadowy figure by the bedroom window, staying up late.
In the room that she does inhabit, lights have remained on, possibly waiting for him to come home.
The innkeepers believe it is the doctor's wife, hoping against hope that her straying husband will finally come home to her. And every June, it seems she almost gets her wish.
Once a year, a horseless carriage would come up into the driveway, and somewhere along the driveway, it would vanish. Since he never made it home, this is his way of finally making it home.
Some believe the inn at Shadow Lawn is full of other spirits as well.
They can be sitting next to you at dinner time. They can be going up the staircase with you as you're bringing in your luggage.
But be warned, these ghosts have their own ways of letting you know they were here first.
There are some spirits that consider you an uninvited guest in their home. And sometimes they let you know it.
It appears some spectres keep watch, others have tales to tell, and there are those that continue on with their duties from times long past. The mountains of northern New England are a favorite spot for tourists who want to commune with nature. For many of them, the perfect retreat is the Mount Washington Hotel and Resort in New Hampshire. Guests have been visiting the hotel's 300 rooms for over a century.
We're located right at the base of Mount Washington. We're a little lucky here because the mountain acts as a real buffer for us and sort of protects us from the winds. So things are pretty calm.
But sometimes, late at night, this calm has been broken. Things may not be quite as peaceful as they seem.
She walked straight up to me and she looked me in the eye and she said to me, "Is this place haunted?"
When Mount Washington first opened its doors, its combination of fresh air and luxury attracted America's elite, the Vanderbilts, Astors and Rockefellers. But it was the hotel's hostess who ensured that such high society clientele return year after year. Her name was Carolyn, and some say, though she died long ago, she plays hostess still. At the turn of the last century, Joseph Stickney, a hard-working hotelier, built Mount Washington as a testament to his success and as an expression of his deep love for his wife, Carolyn.
He was the love of her life and she was the love of his life. They spent a lot of time together. They enjoyed each other's company.
Their love flourished at Mount Washington. And while Joseph took care of the business affairs, Carolyn was the gracious hostess to society's elite.
One of the things that she was very well noted for was somehow she always managed to be the best dressed. She always wore the finest jewels.
Outdoing some of the wealthiest women in the world wasn't easy, but Carolyn had a secret weapon. Each night, she stood out of sight on the balcony for a sneak preview of her guests' elegant evening attire.
From the balcony, there's a view of the grand staircase. Now, Carolyn had a perfect view of all the ladies coming down for dinner.
Carolyn would choose her own wardrobe only after taking note of the other women, and her grand entrance always turned heads. But Carolyn's love for her public role as hostess could never compare with the quiet passion that filled her private life. After tending to their guests, Joseph and Carolyn always dined alone by candlelight. And like young lovers, they would end each evening with a dance in the ballroom. But their epic romance was not to last. Years of hard work had taken their toll. And one day, without warning, Joseph's heart gave out.
Joseph died in December of 1903, just 2 seasons after the hotel was opened.
The passion that had filled Carolyn's world was gone, but she chose to stay where she and Joseph had been the happiest.
She would still be seen wandering the property and doing the things that they enjoyed together. I think it was a way for her to sort of heal and get through that loss.
When at last she died many years later, most assumed Mount Washington had lost its guardian angel. But according to the staff, it seems Carolyn was destined to return.
It's the manifestation of a figure passing by out of the corner of your eye. It's the turn of a doorknob or the jingle of a key. It's just these little signs that let us know that Carolyn's around.
But some of Carolyn's signs are not so subtle. Late one night, a hotel guest said she received a very disturbing visit.
About 2 o'clock in the morning, she heard a light knock on her door.
When the guest answered the door, it appeared at first as if no one was there. But when she stepped into the corridor, she saw something that made her blood run cold.
She looked down the long hall, and she said there was a perfect white shroud, and it just was moving at a steady pace.
Locals say Carolyn has never left Mount Washington and has never lost her old habits. Each night before dinner is served, a hazy outline is seen on the balcony overlooking the grand staircase. It is the same spot where Carolyn secretly spied on the guests of her own day. The dress code may have changed, but it seems Carolyn still keeps her vigil. And it appears she's most interested in guests who check into room 314, the room with an antique dear to her heart.
Carolyn's bed is still here in room 314. It's a beautiful hand-turned rock maple bed.
Those who sleep in the four-poster bed Carolyn and Joseph once shared are often awakened in the dead of night by a lonely vision from the past.
We've had a number of people saying that in the middle of the night they'll see a woman in room 314 brushing her hair, just sitting there on the edge of the bed, brushing her long hair.
Night staff at the hotel say they have tried to trace romantic music that drifts through the halls, only to find the tune transcends space and time.
It wasn't a song I recognized, but it was a melody, and it repeated itself, but we couldn't come up with a location. Each time we sought out the area, it would seem to be the same distance away.
And it's not just haunting music. There are other reminders to visitors and staff that Carolyn is still there, keeping a watchful eye over her beloved hotel.
Now, on a night that it was a full moon, and the windows rattling, you would find yourself definitely looking over your shoulder more, hearing a few more noises that you didn't hear earlier.
One night on routine security rounds for the hotel, Fred Hollis ran into more than just bumps in the night. As he walked toward the ballroom, the chandeliers began to tremble. And when he entered the ballroom where Carolyn and Joseph once danced, for a moment, the past seemed to cross over into the present.
One evening, I was walking into the ballroom, which I had done on many, many occasions before, and I got about halfway across the ballroom floor when every hair in my body electrified. I mean, it tingled. I had the strongest presence. Couldn't tell you today if I could have gone further. Really no explanation.
It appears Carolyn will never abandon Mount Washington or forsake the greatest love of her life.
I think the reason that Carolyn haunts this place is this was where her heart was. This was where her Joseph was.
In some hotels, things aren't always as they seem. When a fellow guest walks by, look again. Was she really there at all? In the shadow of Windsor Castle, where tourists flock to catch a glimpse of royalty, there is a forest alive with spirits. The woods here are filled with the bones of those who met untimely and violent ends.
Windsor is a very historic area. So severe were some of the laws decreed by the monarchs that many tragedies happened in the forest.
When the sun sets, locals believe unmarked graves open wide and tortured souls bemoan their ghastly deaths.
They used to do terrible things to people, didn't they? So you can imagine that people came back and haunted people because of the atrocities.
In the heart of this historical landscape is the village of Ascot, a quaint locale with an intriguing past.
Ascot has a number of legendary ghosts.
And according to locals, Ascot's most active ghost makes her home at the Berrysteed. The Berrysteed was built in the mid-1800s as a traditional English country house.
It's an old-fashioned building, red brick, with the turrets on, one pointed, one round.
Its lovely gardens and lawn attract guests from far and wide. But it is the legend of a young woman named Eliza Kleininger that truly sets this hotel apart. At a young age, Eliza left her home in Germany for a new life in England, where she dedicated herself to serving the lady of the house, Mrs. Standish. Eliza had no family and no friends, but she adored Mrs. Standish like a mother.
Eliza would have been very close to Mrs. Standish because she would have looked after all her clothes, her jewels and everything.
Eliza took special pride in caring for Mrs. Standish's jewels. The exquisite collection had been in the family for centuries. Since the Standishes were the only family Eliza knew, it was as if the gems were part of her lineage too. She spent hours polishing the jewels, until one night, just after 3 a.m., disaster struck.
I don't know how the fire started, but the place must have been well alight. There were no fire engines and fire alarms in those days.
Mrs. Standish and Eliza escaped, but the home was engulfed. And then Eliza made a fateful choice. A haunted hotel can be the perfect spot for restless spirits. At the Berrysteed in Ascot, it's said to be a young maidservant, Eliza, who gave her all to preserve a family's treasure from a horrible fire. As the Berrysteed burned before Eliza's horrified eyes, she suddenly thought of Mrs. Standish's jewels trapped in the fire. Hundreds of years of family heritage would be lost. In a split second, she made a decision that would cost her far more than diamonds and gold. She went back into the blaze.
Which, of course, in retrospect was very foolish because she perished in the fire.
Eliza was overcome by smoke on her way out of the house. She died at the base of the stairs. The door to safety just a few feet away. From that day forward, the Berrysteed lay still.
The Standish family moved away and the house stood empty for a long time because the legend of Eliza Kleininger.
But perhaps the house wasn't quite empty. Shortly after Eliza's death, locals spoke of seeing a ghostly form inside as they passed on foggy nights. Even after the home was restored, no one dared to purchase it for fear of awakening Eliza's spirit.
Because there was a ghost, people wouldn't have wanted to live in here.
The building was never again to be a private home. When the property finally was sold, it became a hotel.
You come up the stone steps, you come into the lobby, and then there's a beautiful staircase, the original staircase in the building.
The only physical evidence of the building's scarred history is a set of oddly mismatched turrets. One was consumed in the fire, the other survived. But the new owners quickly discovered that the Beresteed contained another reminder of that tragic night. Just after 3 a.m., the same hour that fire swept through the Beresteed so long ago, the sound of rasping breath echoes through the halls.
It can be very eerie at night. Maintenance men have heard inexplicable noises.
Hotel guests make sure they're safely in their rooms by 3, because according to legend, that is when Eliza begins to roam.
People see the ghost of Eliza Kleininger walking through the hotel in various places, mainly on the upper floors.
Even when the halls appear empty, those who work the night shift know better than to think they're alone. They describe a presence, a cold chill, and the shallow sound of a woman gasping for breath.
They have a cold feeling that there is something there.
There are those who believe death took Eliza unaware, and that she does not realize she is gone. They believe it is her slight form that is seen descending the staircase night after night, still looking for a way out.
The ghost of Eliza Kleininger remains in the hotel because the ghost remains on the site where they were killed in tragic circumstances.
Because she perished in the fire, she wants to get out. And I don't know how to release her. And perhaps if I could, I would.
It seems Eliza is here to stay. Tragedy binds her to the Beresteed, and she may never escape the walls that surrounded her to the last. At a haunted hotel, you never know who's at the door or what's behind the keyhole. About 75 kilometers northeast of San Francisco, visitors spend their days in California's Napa Valley, sipping fine wine and touring the vineyards that blanket the hills.
One of the most remarkable things about Napa Valley is the density of the wine-producing region. What you're seeing is essentially every driveway in the valley is a new winery.
After a day of roaming local vineyards, many visitors stay at the historic Napa River Inn.
As people come into the building, they are immediately taken with the history. The furnishings that you see in the hotel and the furnishings you see in the lobby definitely put you back 100 years.
The inn was once a thriving mill that played an important part in Napa Valley's development. But not all of its history is happy, and reminders of the building's darker days have sent some guests running in fear.
He thought he saw a man hanging from the trusses.
Who is this tortured soul, and why is he still here? According to local law, the story goes back to the building's days as a mill. Albert Hatt Jr. was the mill's owner. While he enjoyed his work, his true happiness came from the love of his life, his wife Margaret. The couple spent every moment side by side.
I envision Albert and Margaret spending time together and looking at all that they'd worked hard for and put together.
But good fortune would soon run out for Albert. when the life he knew began to unravel.
There was a change in the Industrial Revolution. The steamship business started to decline. That started to turn the tide against the business.
Margaret remained Albert's ray of hope, and her love kept him from despair. But soon, even this anchor would begin to slip through his fingers. Margaret fell ill with tuberculosis. The diagnosis eclipsed any potential business failure. As Margaret suffered, Albert clung helplessly to her bedside. Until finally, she was gone forever.
Once Margaret died, I think he lost all thought of continuing. I think he lost the desire to continue to live.
With a heart too heavy to bear, Albert took fate into his own hands.
He hung himself, of all days, on April 1st, which is April Fool's Day.
After Albert's death, the once prosperous mill closed its doors.
For many, many years in the 1900s, after the mill went out of business, this beautiful brick building sat empty. And we always imagined what could be going on in that building.
Finally, in the year 2000, the mill was renovated and became the Napa River Inn. Though the structure was the same, the transformation from old mill to luxury hotel was astounding.
You'll come into the hotel and walk into a lobby that's all marble and chandeliers.
Despite the new look, there have been reports suggesting otherworldly pieces of the past remain.
People have said that they've felt things, they've seen things. There are hauntings here at the Napa River Inn.
Napa Valley natives speculate about the two distinct spirits that are said to roam the inn. They have concluded that they are two souls forever intertwined that seek to be reunited.
Albert and his wife, Margaret, have taken up residency here.
Hoteliers and guests believe that Albert and Margaret's spirits are like two ships that pass in the night, never quite connecting, but forever searching. Perhaps even using modern technology in their pursuits.
Somebody was in the elevator and going up and down.
Guests report that Albert and Margaret may not be the only ghosts roaming the halls. Spirits from times gone by linger on. And in the lobby, otherworldly reminders of the building's past hark back to the old mill days.
Guests, when they walk into the lobby, still can hear the bustling feed store and crates being stacked.
But for hotel visitors, the ghostly sounds of the hotel are not nearly as unnerving as coming face to face with an apparition from the past.
They talk about seeing a woman walking down the hall in a period dress.
And those wanting to escape Napa River Inn's most terrifying encounter should avoid the bakery, for it is there that guests report seeing Albert's ghost reliving his darkest hour. Staff members say tragic moments from the past do live on at the inn. But many hope that the ghosts of Albert and Margaret will someday find one another and remain together for eternity.
They're people destined to be with each other forever.
Some haunting tales begin when fate twists the dreams of those who lived long ago. But others arise from that moment a spectre took dark matters into its own hands. In the American South, travelers to the city of Savannah, Georgia, revel in the delicate beauty of the Spanish moss that flows over the trees.
A strangeness permeates Savannah. We have a long history of spirits.
The peculiar feeling that pervades Savannah's streets may be a holdover from the city's earliest days. A time when war ravaged and disease raged.
We have a tradition of death here because of the major fires that have destroyed the city, the yellow fever epidemics. The second bloodiest battle of the Revolution was fought literally just north of where we're sitting.
When a new building goes up in Savannah, workers often discover something disturbing in the city's red earth.
So just about anywhere you dig in the historic district, you're going to find human remains.
Today, life goes on above this layer of death. Travelers rest in Savannah's gracious homes and inns, never knowing what or who may lie beneath. Across from Savannah's Forsyth Park, the sweeping veranda and shady courtyard of the Forsyth Park Inn welcome guests to its southern hospitality.
From the exterior, it's a very inviting, happy, bright, cheerful home, but you cannot imagine until you actually enter into the home what it has to offer.
Paneled in rich woods, the inn is full of charming details. But this beauty and grace cannot hide the building's dark history or the many stories of the spirit said to reside here. At the turn of the 19th century, Forsyth was home to Aaron and Lois Churchill. Unable to have children of their own, the couple took in a young girl named Lottie and raised her like a daughter. In their home, Lottie enjoyed a life of comfort and privilege.
Lottie was a very well-off, very pampered individual, and they had a very gracious lifestyle in this house.
But more important than money, Aunt Lo and Uncle Aaron, as Lottie called them, provided her with a loving family. Eventually, that family grew a little larger. Aunt Lois's younger sister Anna had fallen ill, and it seemed Forsyth would be the perfect setting for her recovery.
Lottie was so fond of Anna, and they seemed to do a lot together.
Anna was like the older sister Lottie never had. But Lottie would soon discover that she was not the only one who shared a special bond with the family's new guest.
One night, Lottie was just walking about the house, and she found her Uncle Aaron, who was really like her father, embraced in this passionate kiss.
The woman he was kissing was not his beloved wife Lois, but her sister Anna.
She was so taken back and so angered by it. She didn't understand what was going on. She was so frightened that it would just tear the family apart.
Driven by an overwhelming need to protect her family, Lottie spent the night devising a rash plan. And the next afternoon at tea, she was ready to carry it out. Long ago, at what is now the Forsyth Park Inn in Savannah, Georgia, A young girl named Lottie tried desperately to keep her family together. A pinch of poison was all it took. Moments later, Lottie's Aunt Lo cradled her sister Anna as she lay dying. Lottie's plan had worked, but her triumph would be short-lived. When Anna died, Aunt Lo revealed a secret that would destroy Lottie's young life.
Aunt Lo turned to Lottie and said, "This woman that has died is your mother." And from that moment on, Lottie's life was over as she knew it.
Lottie had murdered the mother she had never known. Tortured by guilt, her mind turned against her. She was admitted to a mental hospital where she would ultimately die, far from the loving home she had cherished so much. In 1985, the home was converted into an inn, and today it welcomes visiting guests unaware they may be sharing their rooms with a spirit still longing for a home.
We had just acquired the inn, and I was sitting by myself in the parlor, and I looked up on the stairwell and saw this girl.
As the new innkeeper fixed her gaze, a chill went down her spine.
I remember I knew I was looking at someone that did not represent our time. And that's when I looked away, and then when I looked back at her, she was gone.
But not for long. The innkeeper soon learned the story of those who had lived in the house before her, and realized the face she had seen on the staircase was Lottie's. The discovery was unnerving, but she would soon learn that Lottie had a helpful streak as well. Late one night, the innkeeper looked for the keys to lock up the inn, but they were nowhere to be found.
I was really frustrated that I couldn't find the keys, and right at that moment of frustration, my kitchen door blew open, and the keys fell right before me, right to my feet.
The keys had dropped out of nowhere, perhaps a favor from beyond.
That kind of stuff happens with ghosts all the time. Lottie dropped those keys at her feet.
This was not an isolated incident. So many visitors experienced events they could not explain that one guest began documenting them. It all began one night when the guest was kept awake by the creaking of rocking chairs on the veranda just outside his room. The air was still, the inn was quiet. While the chairs continued their inexplicable rocking, he took out pen and paper and started to write.
Somebody wrote a note about their experiences, and the Secret Drawer Society was started.
The Secret Drawer Society is the name the innkeepers coined for guests who document their haunting tales and leave them in bedroom drawers for others to read. Members of the Secret Drawer Society agree that it is Lottie's eyes that follow them through the inn at night. But few guests realize that even in daylight, Lottie may be close at hand.
In the afternoons, we have a wonderful wine social hour.
During social hour, the staff at Forsyth has come to expect an extra visitor. A young girl, staring into the parlor with sorrowful eyes. Lottie is thought to roam everywhere in her old house, But there is one particular place that seems to lure this sad spirit. The site of a horrible crime.
People have seen a young lady in a dress of that fashion in the garden.
When the full moon illuminates Savannah's night sky, they say Lottie's apparition roams the courtyard garden at Forsyth Park Inn, her tormented soul haunted by memories of a century-old murder.
You really can feel the spirits that have lived before us here. They are moving about all the time, and you will leave with an experience that you'll remember forever.
Skeptics claim that spirits are the figments of overactive imaginations. But those who have encountered visitors from beyond say the facts of this world can be much, much stranger than fiction. And that one of the best places to hear these stories is a haunted hotel, where past lives may touch the present, and weary travelers can meet restless souls.